Good to see you guys. And today is a different day for me. I'm going to be interviewing somebody. I'm interviewing a lawyer for an organization called the Reporters Committee, and her name is Ellen Osinek. I think I'm saying her name right. She'll correct me, I hope. And I'll bring her on, and we'll talk about what we're going to talk about. It's a committee to let me see if I can invite user. Yep. Okay, let's see if this works, Ellen. Let's see, invite. No, I don't want to block. Okay. Hi, John from Rockville. Good to see you, John. I'm trying to invite the Reporters Committee, Ellen, to join me. Anybody on HAPS there can help us? Present on screen. Let's see. Reporters Committee. Let's try that. Invite. I'm gonna invite you, Ellen. Sorry, guys. I've never interviewed somebody. I've been on other broadcasts. See, I just invited her. Thanks, Ron. Gave me an award. Hello, Mark. Mark is the CEO and co-founder of HAPS. Good to see you, Mark Goldman. I'm trying to get Ellen Ospinak on my stream to interview her. It's not working. Let's see. Tap on user to invite them. Sorry, guys. I don't know what to do. Let's see. Anyway, Reporters Committee, I'll just start talking. Maybe somebody will figure this out. Hello, Kieran from Dublin. Thank you for the award, Kieran. From Brighton, Carolyn from Brighton. I'm hoping to interview Ellen Ospinak, a lawyer from the Reporters Committee, which is a really important organization started in the 70s. And I was hoping Ellen would talk about it. I know she wants to, but I can't seem to get her on here. Anybody have any suggestions? I do need your help, Mark. How do I tried to invite, I pressed the plus people here, and I'm trying to invite the Reporters Committee to join me. Hello, Pablo. Maybe Pablo can help me. I pressed the plus people icon on my screen, and it says to invite Reporters Committee, and nothing happens. That's me. There's a picture of me there. So I'm interviewing myself. I'm looking at the comments. Anyway, I wish Ellen could be on screen, but Reporters Committee does a lot of work for helping journalists in this country with legal issues, and I thought I'd interview her, but I don't. Let's see, Pablo, they haven't joined yet. They did say they were on the stream, Reporters Committee. Hold on, I have to plug in my phone now. Apologies to everybody for this delay. I will be drawing something. Okay, Ellen is here. I don't know how to invite her. Should we start again? Let's try to invite her again. I tap on the Reporters Committee and invite. Invite. Not working. Anyway, we had a nice conversation earlier, which I'd hope to repeat here. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Let me look at the comments. It says you have to be invited. It says I have the invite. Oops. Are you joining me? Oh, there you are. Yay. Okay, good.
Oh my
Sorry.
goodness. Huge thanks to Pablo
Oh
for
yeah, Pablo.
holding out.
Pablo is a part of the HAPS community supporter. He works for HAPS, and he's always helping me if I have issues or problems or don't know how to do something. And so that's great. Thank you, Pablo. Thank you, Mark. So let's see, where were we? Okay, so I just gave a little tidbit of who you are and why we're talking to you. So tell you in your words, tell the viewers what the Reporters Committee is, and I'll start drawing in a minute. I'll turn this around and draw while you talk.
Oh, good. I know everyone, including me, comes here not just to hear you, but to watch your process and see your work. I was telling someone earlier that part of the joy of watching you on HAPS is that you're so transparent about your process and the way that you show your sketch, like yesterday or the day before. You showed your sketch and then you drew it live, and it's really inspiring how transparent you are about your process. And I will just use that little phrase to pivot to that's definitely what RCFP, the Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press.
I love what you guys do. I'm in awe of you guys on what you do. So tell
well,
us
thank
more.
you. I was just about to say we're committed to transparency in a different way. And that is that since the 1970s, the Reporters Committee has provided pro bono, that's free legal services to journalists throughout the United States to protect and defend press freedom, the right to gather news free from interference, and the right to publish that news without being libelous. And in conformance with the law. So Reporters Committee, I just joined as part of an expansion of their services, so that there are 5 states and Oregon, which is where I live and practice, is one of them. And those 5 states each got a dedicated attorney who had substantial experience in the practice of law in that state. And we are here in our respective states. And I'm not sure if anybody is on HAPS from Oregon or has visited Oregon. Please give me a little shout out. It is my beloved state, and I'm so proud to work with the local journalists and news organizations here to expand transparency and press freedom in Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah.
Great.
I
what are the other 5 states? What are the other 5 states? Do you know? Or the other 4 states?
Yeah. We consider ourselves a team, the local legal initiative attorneys, and we are in Tennessee, Pennsylvania, Colorado, Oklahoma, and Oregon. So we definitely cover the United States. And I think as an inaugural member of the local legal initiative, I couldn't be prouder of the colleagues that I serve with. But it is not at all difficult for me to tout the incredible work and the just interesting history of the Reporters Committee that I think you alluded to, which is, they were born in the crucible of crisis and turmoil in Washington, D.C. Amidst
what was the incident that led to this?
Well, oh my goodness. I just have to say, Paula Knudsen Burke is the other local legal initiative from Pennsylvania, and she's on here. So I'll gonna give her a wave. It was born out of a flurry of government subpoenas that were directed to reporters. And they came from the Nixon administration, and they were sent out to a variety of reporters for and I may have this wrong, so please someone correct me, but in response to a flurry of subpoenas that were issued for sources and materials related to reporting on the Pentagon Papers.
Mm-hmm.
And at this time, at that time, it was really, there just were not a lot of legal resources, the ones that, certainly no free legal resources. And so some folks at, again, I believe it's the Post, but they realize, that there's just, the reporting cannot happen in an environment of intimidation, in an environment where the government is not being transparent, and certainly in an era, the Nixon administration, and I would say particularly in the last 4 years, what we've seen at the federal level is leadership and decision makers who are aggressively undermining the press. And that is exactly what Reporters Committee, they were born, like I said, in the crucible of the 1970s. And, I could not be prouder to be part of this organization at this time in our history where the press there's no sugarcoating it. It's under attack in so many different ways: physical attack, just attack on the principles, what a free press stands for. Reporters Committee, lawyers, sometimes we're not the most glamorous, but, we really.
What do you mean? I don't agree. I don't agree with you. Very glamorous job.
Yeah, it can be. Well, I tell you what, Reporters Committee certainly has some really, really juicy issues and really, interesting issues. Sadly, over the last 4 years, issues that I, in my lifetime as an attorney, didn't think I'd be dealing with, attacks on just basic constitutional issues. I
thought it was apropos that that we're doing this interview the week that we have a new administration, and the last 4 years have been a repeated attack on our press, and that we're the enemy of the people, even before he was elected. And it's and in fact, I drew this drawing when in 2016 when I began to see what he was doing. So I think it's great to hear what you all are how you're protecting our rights in terms of the press.
Yeah, I think some of the issues that are near and dear to RCFP, and our executive director Bruce Brown, I think had an excellent forecast of what, how we might pivot in 2021 to go from, simply defending and attempting to hold the line at our basic constitutional rights, and to pivot to try to expand transparency, to try to expand press freedoms. But, the damage that has been done, just the toll that I think it's clearly taken, has just been immense. And I think I agree with you, to be able to have this discussion with you at such a consequential week in the nation's history is, it almost feels like we all just need a moment to breathe and accept that, while things are not going to change overnight, that we have, perhaps an opportunity here, both with this new national administration, but also just with, I think, a desire, and maybe I'm too optimistic, but I really think a desire on the part of so many people in the United States to come together in our collective grief over the pandemic, but also our resilience. I mean, something that, I've experienced here in Oregon personally. And I saw somebody saying that Oregon was, high on your list, the Willamette Valley, which is where I live, to visit. And I, post-pandemic strongly encourage that. But, Oregon has we've experienced incredible, I think our governor referred to it as a relentless year of pandemic and wildfires and civil unrest. And so you know, the press is so essential, I think, to help all of us come together and collectively understand what's happening so that we all can, you know, have the ability to at least, you know, have a conversation, a discussion that is in the public sphere about what our values are and about how we, you know, want to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think many people are sighing a big sigh of relief, and that we really came close to a huge threat to our free press and free speech. Ellen, for some reason, I can't see you. Can you see me?
Oh, no. Yes, I can absolutely see you.
Good. So anyway, I'm talking to a blank screen. If Pablo's still there, maybe he can fix it. I can't see your face, so I'm interviewing just by audio. But so the Reporters Committee. Let's see. I mean, most people think about the free press, although maybe in the last 4 years it hasn't been the case, but they think in terms of free press that is not a problem that we have in this country, that they think, oh, that's what's going on in other countries, in third world countries and dictators and all that. But in fact, it's maybe more subtle here, but we really have a lot of assaults on our free press, right? And do you do a lot of work with international issues?
Reporters Committee mainly does work in terms of, you know, actually direct representation of folks, primarily in the United States. Having said that, and without, you know, giving away any confidences, there are certainly organizations overseas that work with United States-based journalists, you know, and the internet is our world now. And so in that regard, there are certainly international issues that the Reporters Committee touches on, and you know, the legal staff, who I cannot say enough good things about, they really have that broad perspective and, you know, have to be a generalist. And so, but I think, you know, to your point, you know, I agree with you. I think that typically we think of, you know, freedom of the press issues as being more prominent overseas in places where, you know, maybe there are dictatorships, or I see Eric over there with a North Korea has a free press.
Yeah.
So yes, but yeah, I think that the assaults on press freedom have been so visceral this year. They've been, you know, reporters on the ground, and I'll just use Oregon as an example, you know, being subject to physical attack from law enforcement, from other, you know, protesters. And, you know, there are those sort of physical safety issues that certainly have predominated, I think, for a lot of attorneys who are covering that. But I agree with you that press freedom, I define that more broadly. It's concerned with the free flow of information and the right to collect and gather that information. And there are multiple ways in the United States currently where that's not happening. And I think Eric also asked me, you know, what are your values? Define your values. And for me personally, as an attorney working in this area, you know, my values are that, you know, the free exercise of press freedom, which I define as, you know, the ability to communicate and express through various mediums, that is a right that should be freely exercised. And so I place a strong value on that. And I recognize, and part of why I think the work that I get to do is so interesting, is that right, when you freely exercise it, can bump up against other rights and values, like the value of privacy or potentially the value of safety. And so, you know, what the Reporters Committee is here to do is to support the people who are working to freely express themselves through media, and to step in and be the advocate for that side of the equation, recognizing that there are legal reasons and other reasons why those rights might need to, be a part of a discussion, or they may be in conflict with other rights. And so the Reporters Committee and the lawyers that work for it, we're here to take the side of the journalists and news organizations who are fighting for press freedom, and trying to push the law forward where it's gray, and unduly restricts press freedom. So I would say that's kind of where I'm at. Oh, Eric says he has to go cook.
Oh, yeah. It's so what else haven't we touched on? The internet has changed so much, since I started out in print, and I watched it change and go through a lot of growing pains in terms of journalism on the internet, and then social media platforms, and there's all sorts of, it must make lawyers' jobs more interesting maybe, but much more complicated to navigate that. I always wonder what for example, the lawyers at Twitter what they have to go through, all the kinds of things they have to navigate, global issues, and you're working in the United States, so talk about the internet a little bit, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yes, I think I like how you delicately put that, it must make it interesting, and it does. It's complex. But I mean, I think one of the ways that the internet has really changed is the scope of it, and the ability to. I guess to put it, another way, it's the voluntary giving up of our privacy, something that all of us, whether we felt we had agency in doing that or not, all of us do when we participate in social media. And so I think that aspect of reporting is still in flux. I mean, there's always been a tension between the First Amendment and news gathering and our own, a right to privacy. And I think that the internet has simply, really highlighted that particular legal conversation. I mean, it's obviously a conversation that folks are having generally, but in the law in the United States, I think the internet has just accelerated that conversation and really started to challenge the courts to define where a right to press freedom and a right to privacy conflict. How do we want to balance that in a democracy? And so I think that the internet has supercharged that conversation and is pushing the law into areas where just didn't exist 50 years ago. I mean, the concepts, the legal concepts to answer the questions are all there, but I think that the internet has given us new ways to think about our own privacy, given that we post so much of ourselves and our work and our processes online.
That's true. I mean, we talked, you and I had a conversation earlier, and we talked about property on social media and how you put it out there, and it, as a cartoonist, I put my work out there knowing that it's going to be used by other people. And that's okay with me on one level. I'd like to get paid, but I understand that for me, the exchange of ideas is important. So that's why I do it freely. But then there'll be people on certain platforms that will misuse your work. And that happened to me once. A person used one of my cartoons and just changed the words on it to get at somebody else. It was about gun control, and the cartoon had nothing to do with gun control, but this person just I was a tool, used my drawing to get at somebody else. And that, I'm sure, happens frequently. I spoke to Twitter, I wrote Twitter, and I don't know what happened after that, but yeah, it's all new ground for everybody.
Yeah, it's definitely new ground. And there are so many good things about it. And I think in our last chat, somebody said, and it can also be used as a force for not so good. And Hal asked, what about so-called citizen reporters? Do they have similar rights to professionals?
That's a great question for this particular app because well, I mean, on all the social media channels are citizen reporters. So yes, answer that. That's a great question, Hal. Thanks.
Yeah,
if you're just joining us, I want to tell people, if you're just joining us, we are talking to Ellen Osinek, who's a lawyer for the Reporters Committee, which is a decades-old committee that helps reporters in the United States, journalists in the United States with legal issues. So, and I did a drawing earlier, but now we're just having a nice conversation. So go ahead and answer that question. That's a good question, Hal.
Yeah, it is a great question, Hal, and I'm going to give you the quintessential attorney answer, which is it depends. But in general, yes, citizen reporters, or I suppose the attorney in me wants to frame it very specifically, which is people who are gathering information and disseminating information have very similar rights to what you might think of as a traditional reporter or journalist. Somebody like Liza, who we're watching here right now, who is affiliated with established publications, who has a body of work that has been published, is clearly a journalist, and there is a large body of case law here in the United States that clearly applies to her and her work. But in terms of, in general, many of the rights that a journalist has are quite similar to, a person collecting and publishing information, for example, on HAPS or other sites. They do have very similar rights. And I would stress also they have similar responsibilities. And so, you want to be thinking about both of those things if you are a person who are taking raw information, such as videos that you've collected, and you're applying any sort of analysis to it or commentary, or in Liza's case, you're translating that into a visual medium. That is your content and your work, and it is protected. But as I said, you also have certain responsibilities not to libel people. And so I think that's probably the general answer. But Hal, if you'd want to post another comment back at me, I'm certainly happy to interact.
Yeah, Hal's a great supporter of mine. He's a sponsor of me on here on HAPS, and I really appreciate it. What was I going to say? Oh, first of all, Ellen, it's just still really great, wonderful for me to hear you call me a journalist, because I grew up during Watergate, and so I had great reverence for journalists, and I've always wanted to be a journalist. I always sort of want to be a political cartoonist. So to hear somebody call me a journalist is such a thrill. But I just see it as an exchange of ideas, really, a conversation, and I take my job very seriously in terms of trying not to libel somebody unnecessarily, or to be mean and unnecessarily. And if I'm going to speak facts on the air here on HAPS, I try to make sure that I know what I'm talking about. Or I'll offer opinions because I'm an opinion journalist. But if I'm going to tell you about what's going on in the news, I try to back it up with what I'm reading on reputable newspapers. And then when I write articles as well, I do the same thing sometimes. I have an editor that will check me out, but oftentimes I publish it on my own for like medium.com. And I have to make sure I really take it seriously, that I'm not just spreading misinformation. So
yeah,
that can lead us into to a conversation about, I'd love to ask you about cartoonists, because we know how difficult cartoons can be in terms of being misunderstood and being misused. It started with the Danish cartoon controversy in 2005, and then the Charlie Hebdo murders in 2015, I think, was it?
Yeah.
And how cartoons are not, they're provocative, but but they can cause problems sometimes. I'm not blaming the cartoonists. I'm just saying the misunderstanding of cartoons is now common. And do you have, as at the Reporters Committee, do you work for cartoonists or work with cartoonists in certain legal cases?
Yeah, so the short answer is, and I think somebody posted it in the chat too. Yes, absolutely. We work with cartoonists. I have not had the privilege yet to work with one in Oregon, but I resonate with what you're saying. Your particular, type of journalism is such a powerful visual medium. It cuts right through, I think, and in a digestible form gets a powerful message across. And I think, that you're absolutely right. It provokes strong reactions in the viewer sometimes and can be misunderstood. And then we see, or not even misunderstood, understood, but it can make people angry. And we've seen that with other kinds of journalism. And so Reporters Committee, I think, first and foremost, we're committed, like you, to the free expression of ideas. And that can't happen in an environment where people feel intimidated, where they feel subject to retaliation. Even though that is a reality of our world, and certainly reality, I know that journalists like you and others, have been, it has you probably accept grudgingly as part of your job to have that courage. But I think, cartoonists in particular, your work being visual, I think you alluded to this earlier, there are copyright issues, and those are things that Reporters Committee, we don't deal with. But I would think in one of the issues for, cartoonists in particular, is probably, having the potential of having, at least in the United States, having somebody, serve you with a lawsuit for, a drawing that they felt was offensive. And that is certainly something where the Reporters Committee, that's exactly the kind of issue that we are attuned to, and have a network of volunteer attorneys that you can call our hotline. And that's what we're here for, is if you feel like, somebody has sued you because they're offended by your work, that is not a valid way to squelch the speech of a journalist, of a visual journalist. And so what we do is we defend you in those situations. And there's something called a anti-slap law, which I love that term because it has the term slap in it. But it is essentially a law that just allows you, an attorney, to just get a lawsuit dismissed on behalf of somebody who is being basically harassed for publishing something that they're absolutely entitled to publish.
I've heard about that. Yeah. Also, there was a famous case that I don't have at the tip of my tongue because I didn't come prepared, but it was important for a cartoonist, and maybe you'll remember it as soon as I start to talk about it. But there was an ad in Penthouse magazine that was a satirical, not an ad, but a satirical piece that was pretended to be an advertisement, and it used Jerry Falwell's image in it. And who was the publisher of Penthouse? I don't remember his name.
Flint. Larry
Flint. Right. He defended that piece of satire, and I think it went to the Supreme Court, but they decided that because that fake ad was obviously satire, that Falwell could not have any recourse against Flint in that case. Do you remember that case?
Yes, and you've summed it up quite well. That's exactly right.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, it is fascinating, and I'm young enough that I still love that movie with Woody Harrelson that they did.
Flint was a strange character, and I'm not a fan of Penthouse, but that's free speech, people can.
Yeah, exactly.
But he stood up for satire, which I think was great.
Yes, I think so too. And it was an important point to be made, which is that, if you're a public figure, and a cartoonist, or any other kind of journalist, is commenting on your public persona, and in Falwell's case, was a mocking portrayal. And so that, at least in the United States, is an expectation that comes with our democracy, that if you're a public figure, you will be, you will need to have a thick skin, because that is one of the prices of free speech. And I think it's a price that that history has proved over and over again is a price that we all need to pay for democracy.
And I want to mention that it's connected to that is the idea that cartoonists should punch up and not down. So punch up to public figures, to leaders, and not punch down to people that are less fortunate than us. That's a common phrase used in talking about free speech and freedom of expression in cartoonist world. But I wanted to comment to how Hal said the publisher of Penthouse was Guccione, not Flint, but I think it was Flint in that case, right? I don't remember was Guccione. We shouldn't get into the details of this necessarily, but I want to make sure we're right on that. Ellen, is it Flint or Guccione?
Yeah, well, I know that Flint was he might be right. I thought Flint was named in the suit.
Yeah, so maybe, yeah, I'll have to Google that later.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hal.
Yeah, I suppose maybe it reflects well on both of us as that we don't know.
I didn't come prepared with that, but anyway. Well, thank you so much, Ellen. I think we covered a lot of ground. Mark Goodman had to leave. Goldman, sorry, had to leave. He's the CEO of HAPS and co-founder of HAPS, and he really enjoyed this conversation. So maybe we should do it again sometime. Would you be up for it?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Hal got it. Yep, Flint was Hustler. That's right. And Penthouse. Yeah.
Okay.
Not sure what that says about Hal, but he knows all the.
He's a good guy. No, it was not Penthouse. It was Hustler that sued.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, that's right.
My fault. Right. Thank you, Hal. Sorry.
Yeah. But I'm also with Hal, and that punch up. I really like that phrase you used because I think it captures kind of the journalistic ethics that also are such a big part of your profession. And and I can't thank you enough, Liza. I've watched your TED Talks. I think your commitment to feminism is so inspiring to me. And of course, your work itself is just fantastic. So really appreciate you having me on your inaugural HAPS interview. It's an honor.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll do it again.
Yeah, I think we should do this again. And I also think that I know that you have on your advisory committee, you have a cartoonist who used to organize the silent auction that you guys did with cartoonists, which I gave a couple of things for that to benefit. Remember that? Were you around for some of those?
No, I wasn't there, but and you may know this, but we have some your fantastic drawing that you just did here today. We have a card, and we have some.
Oh,
yeah,
exactly. Let me show you the card. Let me show people the card.
Yes, because it's love those cards, and so we're all lucky to have Liza's Liza's work at our disposal for our
here's my card that I did for you guys in my drawing.
Yeah.
And then other cartoonists did this. Signe Wilkinson, who was the first woman to receive the Pulitzer Prize, she did this drawing for you. She works for the Philadelphia Daily News. Actually, she's retiring this year, sadly, but she was the first woman to get the Pulitzer Prize. The field is still very dominated by guys. And other people, so Chris Bach, Matt Worker. Yeah, it's great. So thank you.
Yep.
And we'll do it again. And thank you all for joining us, everybody. check out the Reporters Committee. Chip Bach, yes, I'm sorry. Chip Bach is the Reporters Committee told me. Chip Bach is the person who is on your advisory committee, and he's also organized the auction every year. So Chip is a great guy. Anyway, thank you, Brett. Brett is works for HAPS as well. He says this has been fantastic, and they want to see more. So that's great. Thank you guys. So let's look at the last bit of comments. Thank you, Kieran, for joining us. Kieran's also an active supporter of mine, which I really appreciate. He's from Dublin. Dublin is such an interesting city. I'm going on tangents all the time, but it's a really great, it's a very high-tech city. I don't know if people know that. It's very forward thinking in terms of technology, and I love that about them. So I'm rambling. Thank you for joining me, Ellen. And everybody check out the Reporters Committee online, and have a great weekend, and wear your masks and stay safe. And thanks for being here. Thanks, Ellen.
Thank you, Liza. It was so great to meet you.
Yeah, good to meet you. See you later. Bye.